Hi, my name is Michelle Leasor, and this is my testimony in opposition of Senate Bill 5. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. Albert Einstein. While I have issues with many sections of Senate Bill 5 and its effect on collective bargaining, I have the most concern over the concept of merit pay. Let me share with you today some thoughts I have about the merits, or would it be demerits, of Senate Bill 5. I'm a high school music educator in Columbus City Schools, and I have been an educator for 11 years. I have taught instrumental, general, and vocal music in grades kindergarten through 12, and I have also taught high school English. I intend to continue teaching because I know that I make a huge difference in my school and in my students' lives. I am lucky to have a great group of music students to work with every day. And they're not required to take my classes, as they are electives. My students have chosen to take music, and I work hard to ensure that they have fulfilling real-world experiences, none of which can be measured by a standardized test or a merit checklist. My biggest concern with the merit pay system, as mentioned in Senate Bill 5, is that it would be very difficult to evaluate my effectiveness as a teacher on paper. Sure, someone with a clipboard and a checklist could stop by my classroom for a snapshot look at the room and check off things that at first glance I do well or don't do well. That in no way captures what I do for my students or for my school. I provide my students with opportunities to gain experiences that they absolutely cannot get in any other way than to be in my class. Take, for instance, the tour we took around CCS elementary schools that my string orchestra and brass choir did back in December of 2010. We visited 3 elementary schools and performed 30-minute concerts at each school. It was an educational experience for the elementary students and a way for my students to gain a real-world experience similar to that of a professional musician on tour. 2 days later, we went to the Columbus Airport and COSI to perform a similar concert. Could the satisfaction and camaraderie that my students felt those days be measured on paper as defining how much merit I contribute to my job? No. Furthermore, can you measure on paper the merit of students in my marching band performing a halftime show at a football playoff game and their joy and excitement of finding out that their performance was going to be televised live? No. One of the highest goals for educators is to ensure that our students can use what they've learned and apply it directly to real-life situations. That's exactly what I do for my students. I realize, of course, that very few, if any, of my students will make a career out of music, but the processes we use in band and orchestra will help them do other things later on in their lives. Although not measurable on paper, my students learn things like cooperation, perseverance, personal reflection, and commitment. They also learn how to plan ahead, manage their time, and prioritize tasks and responsibilities. They can use these skills to become effective employees and citizens of the 21st century, when those qualities are desired by employers and community leaders. Everything we do in my instrumental music classes is a real-world application. The music we practice in class is performed at a live concert for the public. The study of an instrument leads to a student continuing to perform in a community band as an adult. The cooperation between ensemble players in performing a work of music together leads to a professional, quality performance. The creativity involved in improvising a new jazz tune as a class shows good group communication. The combined study of music history and U.S. history that we investigate in Music Survey allows students to make connections between subjects, and so on. What I and all fine arts educators do for our students is really quite simple. We prepare students for the future. 21st century jobs require students to be creative thinkers and innovators, not just products of an institution that only churns out good test takers. Someone walking around with a clipboard to check off what I do or do not do would probably miss most of the good work or wonder how to document this on a carbon copy triplicate form. Just out of curiosity, I asked my students several weeks ago, well before Senate Bill 5 was introduced, what they get out of being part of band or orchestra and what it means to them. Here are some of their responses. Number 1. I feel like I can come to orchestra and the rest of the school disappears for a while. I don't like my other classes because they're boring. And when I asked why those classes were boring, he replied, well, we actually do things in this class. Number 2. In orchestra, I don't have to be around students who are playing around because they don't want to be there. I like this class because we all have the same goal and we want to be a good sounding group. Number 3. I felt like a rock star when the marching band went to Ohio University and performed at their band day last year. It was awesome because so many people were cheering us on because we were in the band. Number 4. Music is a way for me to be more creative than I can in other classes. I want to go to college to be an engineer, and I know that you have to be creative to do that. So, senators, what do you get from me, and how much am I worth as an educator? What is my merit and worth? Here's a list of what I and most of my colleagues do at our jobs, although you would be hard-pressed to find a way to document these on a form. Number 1. I give up time in the evenings and weekends writing and arranging music for my students, either because I can't find a good arrangement that would showcase my band, or we don't have enough money to purchase another piece of music. I also spend countless hours creating interactive lessons for my music survey class, because I understand that if I make my lessons a little more student and technology friendly, that the students will likely retain the information better. All of this takes time away from my own children, who are ages 3 and 16 months, who have grown quite fond of the 40-plus hours of Sesame Street we have recorded on our DVR. I ask you, how many other professionals work an additional 15 or 20-plus hours a week unpaid beyond their contract time? Number 2, I provide snacks, sometimes even full meals, to students who don't have enough food at home. When some of my marching band students come back in the evening for Friday night football games and haven't eaten anything, and likely won't until the next day, I make sure that they don't have growling stomachs and the band has a good performance. I wonder, how many other professionals or senators would do the same? Many wouldn't. Number 3, I never leave a child behind. After performances, including Friday night football games, I stay until every one of my students has a ride home. I have even paid cab fare for students to get a safe ride, and so that they don't have to ride the CODA bus at home late at night. Even though I'm sure that some would think I'm nuts, because I do stay even for the 18-year-olds who need rides. I treat every student as my own child in that sense. I could not live with myself if something happened to one of my students if I left him or her at the school so that I could get home quicker. And I wonder, how many other senators would stay out until 1 a.m. on a Friday night to ensure that a kid gets a safe ride home? Number 4, I don't eat my lunch most days of the week, and it's quite rare for me to show my face in the teacher's lounge during my lunch period. Usually I'm cramming a sandwich into my mouth between classes, or while I'm making phone calls to parents. So what do I do on my lunch period? I volunteer to work with students on their science fair projects, or hold open practice times for students who need additional help with their music, because I know that most of them cannot stay after school due to lack of transportation. And I wonder, how many other professionals or senators would give up their lunchtime to do the same? Number 5, I am a positive role model for my students, many of whom don't even have a parent at home to guide them in life. I know that I'm in the spotlight of my students' eyes, and that everything I do and say can either be joked about or emulated, preferably the latter. My actions speak much louder than my words, and my personal commitment to healthy eating and fitness has influenced 2 of my students and their families to eat healthier, exercise, and lose some much-needed weight. I was drawn to tears the other day when I got an email message from a former student who is graduating from college this spring. She wrote at least 3 pages worth of admiration and appreciation of what I taught her about being a successful young woman, all just from observing how I did my job and lived my life. And I wonder, how many other professionals or senators have teenagers who look up to them like that and write about it for the public to see? Number 6. I see many of my students in class more than their parents see them in the evenings. And even a few of my students are scheduled for 2 classes with me each day. In many ways, I am a surrogate parent to my students, and sometimes students come to me with problems before they will talk with their parents. Of course, I relay the same information to their parents and to the appropriate school personnel as needed. Students come to me because they respect me and trust my voice and opinion. All of my students know that my classroom door is always open if they need a place to vent or be heard. I wonder, how many other professionals or senators mentor and guide young people the same way? Number 7. I am a highly educated and qualified teacher who takes my own education and professional development seriously. I am required by the State Department of Education to take additional coursework to renew my license every 5 years. And I take more than the needed amount of coursework because I feel like I need to walk the walk if I'm going to talk the talk about the need for more education. So I better know what I'm talking about. The so-called vacation that is set by the school district is often taken up with professional development classes or teaching summer school so that I can pay all of my student loan bills in a timely manner. And I wonder, how many other professionals or senators take more than the required amount of additional coursework at their own expense to refine their skills? I could go on for days about how many of us educators build the future one student at a time. Most people would agree that teachers have hard and thankless jobs, much like many other public employees. What is most important to me is that the legislators who take the time to read this essay or watch the video take into consideration that just because something cannot be categorized on a checklist, that it doesn't matter. My teachers union, the Columbus Education Association, knows that we teachers deserve a better solution to the state's budget crisis than to discourage more people from becoming educators and to downplay and eventually eliminate quality education for our future's most precious promise, the students. Thank you for your time and thank you for your support.